As we continue into Chapter 5, we'll do Section 2, translating English phrases and algebraic expressions. This is going to be a big part of our background work as we go into equations and then later solving word problems by putting them into equations. But first of all, what do things mean? So these are the objectives. Now, I like the way they set this up, and you may not have to put every single thing down into your notes, but you want to have a little bit of this so that if I gave you an English phrase here, you'd want to know what would the algebraic expression of that phrase be. So let's just look at it here. The product of 3 and x. Now, product indicates multiplication. So another way of thinking of that would be 3 times x. Or even another way, 3 multiplied by the number represented by x. And if I read too fast, you may have to just pause it, look at this, and let it sink in. Now, how would that be converted into an algebraic expression? And you might say, wow, that's easy. Sure. 3, when there's no sign written between a number and a letter, it implies multiplication. All right, let's take a look at this one. 3 added to a number, whatever that happens to be. And we often use x in algebra. Or I see they're saying z here now. The sum, again, that's the key word, added. When we add things, we end up with a sum of z and 3. So another way to write that, sum or added z plus 3. Another way to say it, 3 more than z. Z increased by 3. And how would that look? So again, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways of saying this. Continuing. Twice the sum of x and 1. Now, when we think twice of anything, this indicates multiplication. So again, the product of 2 with the sum of x and 1. So there's our 2 times the sum of x and 1. So 2 times the quantity found by adding a number to 1. And we're going to let that number, in this case, be x. So what would that look like? Now, one of the keys, and again I see in correcting papers and watching students' performance, is they forget to put the parentheses around a sum. And later we'll see parentheses around a difference. So this now, because of the parentheses, becomes a sum. We're adding. And then again, 2 in front of this with no sign implies multiplication, which is the product then. Twice the sum of this. All right, let's take a look at this. Twice x plus 1. So the plus is translated to sum. Twice x and 1. Again, twice is multiplication. 2 times the x increased by 1. That would be the plus. And then 1 more than the product of 2 and a number. What does this look like? Okay, so twice x plus 1. That's the easiest way. Or 1 added to 2 times x. Usually we put the variable in front, but you have to be careful that it reflects properly on what you're trying to show here. Continuing. Now here we have the difference between 5 times a number and 3. So the difference between 5 times a number and 3. 5 less than the product of a number and 5. That should be 3 less than the product of a number and 5. 5 times a number minus 3. 3 subtracted, there's our minus, from the product of a number and 5. 5 multiplied by a number less 3. So again, a number of ways an English phrase can be presented, but algebraically it looks like this. Now notice we didn't say the sum, so there's no parentheses here. That's another point to look carefully at. So 5 times the number less 3. 5 times the number, or 3 less than 5 times the number. Number of ways to say this. All right, here's an easy one. The square of a number. A number squared. That's pretty easy. All right, here they're building it up a little bit where we need to take it in pieces. The cost of renting a truck for 1 day and driving it X number of miles, if the rate is $30 per day and 25 cents, notice the difference. This is dollars, this is cents here, per mile. So think about this for a moment. Well, you just want to know 1 day, so it's going to be $30 for the 1 day. And then this many miles, so 25 cents per mile, so it'll be $30 plus 0.25x, which is the number of miles. And I may have mentioned this, but I've done all of the certification for this course, and this is the kind of problem you're going to get in the future, and setting it up just as an expression now. Algebraic expression is what you need to do. So there it is. 30 is the cost per day, because it's 1 day. Now if you had it 5 days, then you would just put a 5 and then 30 in parentheses. 5 days rental per day, and then 25 cents per mile. So, reading this over, one of the things you need to be careful about is where do we add something or take something away That would be critical, because these expressions are not the same. And let me write them down here as a little extra stuff here. X minus 3 and 3 minus x are not the same. When we do subtraction, subtraction is not commutative. That is, we just can't switch these things around. So be careful about this. I've seen where students mess up on this. And they're showing that here, that 5n minus 3 is not the same as 3 minus 5n. So be careful as you write these. Okay, now here what we're going to do is translate algebraic expressions into English phrases, going the other way. So again, there are a variety of possibilities, but if you said 5 times x, the product of 5 and x, and we can think of x here, they usually refer to it as a number. And x in algebra is often used, as I mentioned earlier. Okay. The product of 2 and a number increased by 8. And there are different ways to say it. So they're saying twice a number increased by 8. That one would be good as well. Now, keep in mind, these are potentially quiz questions. Think about this one for a moment. Pause the tape if needed. Can you see that this, in parentheses, is the difference between a number and 2? And then 3 times that. So 3 times the difference, sort of like a sum, but in this case difference implies a minus or negative sign. 3 times the number and the difference between a number and 2. Hit that one right on the head. Okay, we're going to give you now some practice problems. And as we did before, pause, physically pause the tape and see what you can come up with. Now, I'm using the letter N. They may be using the letter, some other letter, but that's fine. So 7 less than a number. The number 7 less. Now, if you put 7 minus n, that is incorrect. And when we use the word quotient, quotient is just another name for a fraction. And the first thing they say goes on the top. That'll be the y. And then the whatever they say next goes in the bottom. Now, 14 more than 3 times a number. Now here, if you put the 14 first, that would have been okay, but they usually like the variable first. So, 3 times the number plus 14. Okay, let's see what we can come up here with for words. Now for number 4, just reading it, 10 less a number. There may be others. Now, when it's in a parenthesis like this, it's the difference of a number and 3. And then twice. So twice the difference of a number and 3. Now, when you see the word difference, you have to put that in parentheses. It's sort of like a sum. All right, 5 times a number plus 3 times the same number. And we'll see what they get here. Hopefully I have this written out and you can check it. Now, they're using X and Y's. I like N, but that would be fine. And keep in mind, there are different ways to say things. And that completes our lesson.